Hello, everyone. I hope you all are doing good. For the new folks, right, who are looking into this video for the first time, I would highly encourage if you can like, share, and subscribe to this channel, and as well as feel free to press the bell icon so that you can get notified whenever I'm trying to post any new videos on any particular topic around Sterling Integrator or EDI in general. With that, let's continue with our discussions around making the move from graphical process modeler to BPML language that we started in our last video. For folks who are really interested to like progress in their career as a business process developer, right? And not only map development. With that, let me quickly share my screen and we can continue with the topic. So, we actually covered in our last video, but we took an example of a business process, right? And how we have drag and drop the icons from the stencils and connected them, configured them in the graphical process modeler, which is a Eclipse based tool. And then behind the scene, right, how is the code, like how does the code gets created? What is the structure of the code? So we went through that briefly, right, in our last video. Now, in today's video, what we want to focus is why we should use business process modeling language as a next step, right? You can definitely, like, I'm not discouraging folks who wants to get started on graphical process modeling. Even honestly, okay, myself also started using GPM when I started any like my first business process development. But slowly and steadily, like as I started not only developing business processes or editing existing business process in GPM, which was pretty easy for me as a beginner, but when I was also part of a production support team, right, and I used to go and we used to get different kind of incidents based on different kind of like business process failures. And when you go and like do some debugging, troubleshooting in the business process dashboard with installing integrator and look into the code, it's very tedious job when like if you have to keep your GPM open and then you have to um, download the BP in your local and then open the BP in the GPM and look into the pictorial depiction of the code, right? Instead of that, like if think about a scenario where you can like go into the troubleshooting, right, and click on the name of the business process or processes and be able to see or visualize the entire code within that same window. You don't have to rely on a different tool or like GPM to kind of visualize that. And if you're able to understand, because like the BPML language, as I mentioned, is similar to a XML language, right? So the tags or the elements are self-explanatory, and there, if you read through them, you should be able to quickly understand what's happening, right? So that was one of the very like turning point for me or myself personally, and I'm expecting it would be the same journey, right, that you would take as a senior developer also, and it will really help you expedite and move fast, right, in respect to, oh, okay, I need to create a business process. Okay, earlier it used to take me like maybe 4 or 5 days, right, including unit testing and integration testing. Now you should be able to rapidly develop as well as deploy your code in the production or like staging environment, right? And in addition to that, as I mentioned, easy to see code comments, right? Like typically as a best practice, what a good developer does is that whenever, let's say, they add a new set of code, right, or a piece of code within an existing business process, right, or they remove it, right? Or like even for like initial business process development, the best practice is to be able to put some comments in each of the code blocks, right? Like sequence or operation names, like why you are actually using this operation, right? Because you need to understand one thing. It's not about only writing a code and executing and like letting it run in the production, but also from a maintainability perspective and manageability moving forward. You move out of the project and someone else takes like the responsibility of what you were doing. For him it will be very easy to look into the code and see, oh, okay, why I'm using this operation, why I'm using that operation, why I've removed this or added this. So definitely it's very like so those are the good things, right? Okay, if you put comments in almost every operations, and typically if you look into the GPM, you won't be able to see the comments within the GPM code, but eventually you have to actually do that in the business process modeling language, and as well as in the code itself, which you can quickly view from the Sterling Integrator dashboard. And the last thing that I already kind of touched base, that is like it facilitates troubleshooting. Like for me, how I learned, it was all basically during my production support days. I was able to go into those individual business processes, and it actually helped me to like identify and resolve issues much faster than like if I have to do through GPM. So those are the few key things, okay, which really would be helpful if you can grasp the concept and the structure of the BPML, and you really try to stay away from, like, let's say tomorrow you get a new requirement, you have to write a business process for a particular use case. Why don't you start like writing the business process using BPML rather than GPM, right? You have to start someday or somewhere, right? And that's the good way, and you can then try to troubleshoot that and see what's going on, whether there is an issue with the structure of the code, right? You can like take help from the existing business processes that are out there just to understand the structure of it and be able to then iterate on top of it. So definitely give it a try. It will take some time initially. You might think, oh no, GPM was much better, but the benefits of BPML you would be able to understand once you are kind of well versed with the BPML structure. Now, as I mentioned, this was one of the thing like where this image, right? If you see, it shows the correlation between the graphical process modeler, which is this one, right, and the service configuration and the business process modeling language. Now, what is service configuration? So each and every like steps within a business process is either a service or an adapter. Now, when you install Sterling Integrator, you will have thousands of service and adapters that comes by default. Whereas when you are writing a business process, or when you are creating a business process for specific use cases, you might have to tweak or create a different service configuration from the default service configuration that is already there out of the box. Because for here an example, in an SMTP send adapter, you might be using your own mail service or SMTP mail service, and they have different settings on which port it is running, what's the domain and all that. So you need to create a separate SMTP send adapter service configuration, which then you're going to use it in your process to be able to call that service. So the service configuration, the default service configuration, you uh, create a copy of the default service configuration, edit it, and put your own individual settings, and then use that uh, customized service configuration in your business process. This is what is shown over here, right? And then automatically all the settings that you have provided in that custom service configuration is gets auto populated into a business process, and then you should be able to create like an end-to-end business process. So that is the relationship that I am trying to depict here in this picture by showing the three different windows. Whereas if you see, the GPM is the place where you're writing the code. Before that, like before even starting the GPM, you need to create the custom service configuration for here, as an example, a simplification adapter, and then how it basically looks behind the scene when you're opening the code in the BPML language. This is kind of the relationship between three of those components, right? Now, the next thing that I wanted to touch base is a process node. What is a process node? A process node is actually the root node of any business process that you write or is already there by default. As I showed you this example in our previous session, the business process starts with process name and it ends with a ending braces and a process, right? Or the process ending braces, and the process name is the name that you give to the business process, right? So there's only one process node. You have to understand that there might be multiple sequence nodes, there might be multiple operation nodes, there might be multiple assign statements, but in a single business process there would be one process start and one process ends. And as I mentioned, BPML being an XML document, it has to be well formed and always requires a closing node. So if there is the starting node of a process, there would be an ending node. If there is a starting node of sequence, there has to be an ending sequence node. If there is a starting operation node, there has to be a ending sequence operation node, right? So that's very important. This is the core concepts of developing your skill set on the BPML structure. Moving on, sequence node. What is sequence node? A sequence node is used to segment the BPM into manageable sections. So you can have multiple sequences within a single process, right? Now, how is possible? You might have a sequence node and a sequence end. Now, there might be different rules that you might write, and based on which rule it evaluates to, you can have different choice start, and then there might be multiple sequence start to each of them. So it's like an if else statement. So you can put those. So it's basically a code block, a manageable section or functionality, a distinct section of the code. And as I mentioned, there must be at least one sequence node, but use as many as needed to segment the code. A common user sequence is to, as I mentioned, choice activity, where you will have different sequence start and sequence end, and there would be one path that the BPML will take based on which rule engine it evaluates to true. Based on that, you can cross like, and then there is another one which is called like we'll talk about that later on, which is the error handling, where on fault is also another piece of it, which if any error happens within the execution of the entire business process, the process triggers on fault code block, and there's a sequence starting sequence within the on fault if you want to do some custom um, uh, like processes before you maybe send an email alert to the production support team or the inbox and all that, right? So that's sequence node. Now, in our next video, I'm going to still dive deep into operation node and I will go to individual sections, right, moving forward. With that, I'm going to end today's session. As I mentioned, if you are new to this channel, please feel free to like, share, subscribe, and also like share with your friends who are learning or getting started on the EDI world. And please hit the bell icon, and that will help me also to understand your enthusiasm and like, are you able to make any progress or any insight that I'm able to give it to you. And also feel free to put comments in the videos so that I can understand, am I progressing in the right way, or is there a different step I had to take to be able to like let you know more about Sterling Integrator and be able to help you in your career. With that, I hope you all have a very nice weekend or weekdays, and I'll talk to you next week. Thank you, everyone.